My name is Donato Esposito, and I'm a trustee of the Cosman Keller Art and Music Trust. And it's a very great pleasure to welcome so many people here this evening. One of the things that the Trust is very interested in and wishes to support is the art of drawing and the public's appreciation of drawing in all its forms, all periods, all schools. And I'm very pleased to see that many recipients of the Trust's help and aid are here this evening. The reason why the lecture is held at UCL is because one of our co-founders, the artist Milein Cosman, was a student at the Slade just before and during the Second World War. And one of the things that we do at the Trust is support an MA student in a fine art practice of drawing. And I'm very pleased to see that our current recipient of that award is in the audience, Gabriel Kidd. Previous holders of the award have an opening tonight, in fact. Hannah Uzor, who was the Cosman Keller Scholar 2 years before, and she has an opening tonight at the Nehru Ratman Gallery on Great Portland Street, and it's great to see her career taking off. We support drawing in all its forms, and opening next week at the British Museum will be an exhibition of late Michelangelo, celebrating the last 30 years of his life, shortly before his death at the age of almost 90. And the Trust supported a project curator, Grant Lewis, and I'm very pleased to say he is also in the audience tonight. If you're interested in learning more about the Trust's work, we have a website, and in particular, I may draw your attention to this wonderful monograph by Ines Schlenker, who is also in the audience, so if you want to find out more about the artist Milein Cosman. There are a few copies outside, which first come, first served basis. So with that, I welcome you on behalf of the Trust, and I'll now pass you on to the Slade Professor. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'd like to add my welcome. I'm Mary Evans, and I'm the newish director of the Slade School of Art. And I'd like to introduce Liz Rideal, who is going to present this inaugural Milein Cosman Lecture. Professor Liz Rideal is an artist and writer living in London, a professor at the Slade School of Fine Art. She has received a Leverhulme Fellowship, a British Academy Award, a British Academy Award and a 5-month scholarship at the British School at Rome. Her publications include books on self-portraiture, portraiture, and a bestseller, How to Read Painting. Rideal has exhibited widely in museums and galleries in Europe and America with 3 solo shows in New York. Her artwork is held in public collections including the Tate, the V&A, the British Museum, the National Portrait Gallery, the Vancouver Art Gallery, Canada, Museet for Fotokunst, Denmark, Portland Art Museum, Oregon, the George Eastman Museum, the Yale Center for British Art, the Philadelphia Art Museum, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Welcome,
Thank you.
Liz.
Thank you very much. I am delighted to be here tonight, and it's a great honor, actually. Thank you very much. I didn't come seeking this at all. I wrote this book, which is on sale, during lockdown. I didn't really write it thinking I was going to make a book. It just happened that we were all partnered up during lockdown, and I was partnered up with Sandra Smith, who you've seen drawing on the screen before the introductions. And she is in charge of outreach and summer school. So it's got a slightly different role from the rest of the people who are teaching at the Slade. Anyway, the problem was how to get to these people who were doing drawing, and she was doing fantastic films. And I said, well, look, I could look at your structure of courses and find appropriate drawings that are in the UCL art collection. So that's what I started to do and write a text to go help people think about line and tone and colour and all of those things that are related to drawing. And then I said to the museum, we've got these PDFs, do you want them? And they said, but it doesn't really fit in with how we're doing things. And I thought, oh, damn, I've done a lot of work here. I don't really want to just have it go to nothing. And then I realized that we were having our 150th anniversary at the Slade, and I thought we could celebrate with drawing. Admittedly, the older drawings are from this Western European art collection, largely male, white, European, but I could zhuzh it all up with contemporary art. I can ask all the staff if they would like to contribute a drawing, and then we can pull that together and make this book happen. The other thing I discovered were the marvelous signing in books that exist as records of all the Slade students over the years. I'll get on to that in a minute, because before you've been reading all about, I didn't realize she was not Milein, but Milein. So forgive me if I've been pronouncing it wrong, Milein. So I just wanted to sort of mention Milein and show you here, such a sweetheart, and her painting on the right-hand side that's now in the National Portrait Gallery collection and was on show at their recent exhibition of women's self-portraits. But before we go further down the road of what we're meant to be talking about today, I will just say quickly, we're in the Gustav Tuck Lecture Theatre, which is where I gave my inaugural lecture, introduced by a friend of mine, Rob, who's in the audience. And it just suddenly occurred to me, I just thought, well, who was Gustav Tuck? And why have we got this? It's a great lecture theatre, very expensive little place. So I did a little bit of Googling, and it is very interesting because, of course, Milein came to London in 1939, but Gustav Tuck's family came to London in the mid-19th century. Raphael's Tuck was born in Breslau, which is now in Poland, and he was a carpenter, and he got married to Ernestine Lisner, and they, in the 1860s, had 7 children. The Prusso-Danish and Austrian War happened, and they thought, we've got to move. They came to London. They started off with a little print and framing shop after a few years, and that grew and grew and grew, and they made an empire, a printing empire, which specialized in cards, postcards, and Christmas cards, and calendars, printed full color, beautiful things. And I just thought, what synchronicity, this idea of people moving because of all sorts of things. And of course, it's what we're all talking about at the moment, what to do. But actually, it's always been happening. And my mother is French, she was here. So I think we should celebrate this and just thank Gustav Tuck for our nice lecture theatre, and think about how marvellous it is to all be gathered in our global university, as it's called, to talk about art, because without the Slade, where would UCL be? So, you can look at this and try and see who this is, but before we carry on, I just want to read you this lovely little quote from Sir Lawrence Gowing, who was Slade Professor from 1975 to 1985. Those of you who have not come to these lectures before will see that the correct theme of them is how art keeps laying a little egg like a human fly under the skin of the convention. an egg which can stay there for centuries to hatch out when the situation is ready for it and turn the whole organization upside down into a different kind of thing. I think that's sort of like art and indeed like drawing. So, drawing. Here's Milein drawing. And she carried on drawing after she'd been at the Slade and been at Ruskin. And this drawing that you see on the right-hand side is from '83, and it's Joseph Beuys. And I wanted to use that as an excuse to talk about this, which was another lecture, which I've only ever heard about as a sort of mythic lecture. I've spoken to a number of different people, and this is a photograph of a photocopy of a booklet, and that's why it's so crass, but it's rather wonderful. So this is the Beuys lecture, seminar, 28th of October, 1974. And of course, the reason I'm showing it is this magnificent drawing. He was famous for doing drawings and explaining at length, but you can see what the photographer has done. It's a way of describing a thought process, and it's abstract as well as figurative, and I think completely brings us into this idea of what to do about drawing. How do we define it? And particularly, how do people think about the Slade and drawing? So how do I come to drawing? This, I think, is a rather great quote from a drawing book that I found, a how to draw sort of book, that I found in the basement of the National Portrait Gallery when I worked there many years ago. Drawing is the art of representing the appearance of objects by imitation or expressing, by lines and shades, the forms or appearance of anything in nature or art, the copying of another draft or any design conceived in the mind, and all of this without the assistance of mathematical rules. Its great use is not confined to painters, engravers, gardeners, embroiderers, weavers, think about all that list, but the mathematician, the engineer, architect, and navigator daily practice it. Its use appears in every station of life. Broad, beautiful. I was very, very keen on this book, and this on the right is one of the illustrations from it. And at the time, I was very, very keen on trying to draw with my hands photographically. So this is a sort of interpretation of this early drawing, which is meant to be conveying the conventions of how you draw sadness. And in case you didn't realize, you've got, you know, full sort of description of what should be happening there. So that's another semi-academic and investigative way of making drawing. Now here we have another couple of examples. Geoffrey Camp, who taught here from 1983, said this about the old masters, really, and old masters, old Western European masters. I was helped by Rubens' smallest oil panels. We depend on all of those painters from the past. I look at Watteau, Poussin, Boudin, Degas, Seurat, Piero della Francesca, Corot, Lautrec, and Matisse. The concentrated Rubens sketches were done with tiny flowing marks and embraced a living drama moving in a tiny compass. And I think if you go to the National Gallery and go and look at those panel drawings, which are sort of painted on panels, they're just really exquisite things. So Geoffrey Camp, wonderful artist, and this is a fantastic record. This is from the inside cover of one of his books called Almanac. But what it is they are small diagrammatic sketches that depict his paintings, and there are numbers of them, and you can see he's gone back to them with different things happening and saying, this one says sold Ludmilla or Lydia, don't know, exhibited June, Birmingham, 1960, bathing huts. So that's his drawing. That's sort of really concentrated, very personal, diagrammatic, diary type of art diary. On the other screen, thinking about this lecture, I discovered this, which I knew nothing about. This is a Hokusai manga. So Hokusai made 14 volumes over 64 years of his drawings that were used by students and by other people to familiarize themselves with different ways of actually drawing and copying, you know. So this also was the way that some of the French got to know about Japanese art. And here are the books that I mentioned before. These they used to be about that big and about that wide, volumes that would open out, and you'd have ladies and gentlemen, not of the press, but of the Slade, and you would put your name every morning when you came in to study. But then the first ones that we have are all rather neat and tidy, but then there's a sort of slippage that happens, and you start getting this sort of thing, people just sort of making a mess, and then really going to town. And they are super entertaining and very exciting, I think, to look at. And I really didn't know what to choose. We had a fantastic time looking. Some people just, you know, using the space for working out bigger drawings. And here we've got, this is hilarious. This is the Three Musketeers judge the summer competition. And I still haven't worked out quite who they are, but I'm sure we could because you know, they're cartoons. So we've got a small, that actually does look a little bit like Bernard Cohen, but it's before his time, so it's not Bernard. So these are just little drawings from there. And here we've got more, and we've got Claude Rogers on the right-hand side there, who was a founding member of the Euston Road School with Passmore and Coldstream, who we'll come on to. So the book which designed to be sort of funny and interesting and broad and going through all of these areas, ways that you could go into drawing. And I'm just going to show you a few plates from from the section that's devoted to the UCL Art Museum collection. And I've chosen my favourites, of course, because I'm only going to show you a few. These two I just think are wonderful, sort of drunken, sleepy, great little drawing. I mean, there are some fantastic drawings in the UCL art collection, and these are just some of them. And of course, on the other side there, we've got the Sickert from about 1888. Just so deft and beautifully characterized, these sort of rather raffish, gaunt. Anyway. Here we've got beautiful Sargent watercolor, magnificent painting, full on, as you can see. And I just paired it. I had a lot of fun pairing some of these images. So I've paired it with this Charles Bell, the spinal cord drawings, spinal nerves, which made me think of those Evelyn tables that are on, I can't remember where they are, but anyway, same sort of thing, this idea of sort of splaying out those sinews and looking at them. And then this Ravener on the right-hand side, it was just sort of hilarious, this idea of, in the mid-18th century having this, you expect this skeleton to be talking as well as gesticulating towards the landscape behind. So I was just trying to mix and match and throw it together. Here we've got looking at perspectives. He's called Pence, the chap who's done the drawing on the left-hand side, and this is a documented drawing in various places. The one that's on the left. On the right, we've got a Rowlandson, and this is a private view at the Royal Academy. You can see, and there's some hilarious, I mean, it's really hilarious, people losing their knickers, you know. Or actually, in fact, they weren't wearing knickers in those days, so that's what was happening when you, too many people, it's so exciting, jostling in the crowd. And this piece that I just like, this is a 19th century anonymous painting, drawing, ink, and actually it made me think of this great Guston quote that I did want to put in the book, but because he's American and I was trying to keep it all British, I left him out. But it recently, those of you who went to the Guston show will have seen the drawing that this refers to, which is also an ink drawing. But it's the sentiment that I think is important in relation to drawing. So Philip Guston. I went to Italy for the first time in 1948. Oh, and this is, obviously, this is the volcano by Naples, yeah. And I didn't paint for a whole year. I just travelled and drew out of hotel windows. It's a drawing of the town, Ischia, just looking at the complex of the town, little white buildings and black windows done with just a reed I found on the beach with my bottle of ink. It's strange how something done offhand like this can lead to painting, you know, like a seed. One of my intentions at that time was to attack the paper with a stick, with the stuff, the ink, with as little preconception as possible. That is actually not knowing, just a feeling, like some instinctual feeling, like you just want to make marks. You don't know where it's going to go, how it's going to turn out. Now, because I didn't want to reiterate what was in the book, I was hoping you might go and get your own, I thought, what am I going to do? I'm going to hang the drawings that are in the book and drawings that are in the collection on the time frame of the directors of the Slade. So I'm going to now show you their images and what they look like and the sort of drawings that they were doing at the time, so that we will see how the type of drawings change over time, even though the framework is sort of relatively loose. So this is Edward Poynter, who was an incredibly successful artist, and he was actually born in Paris, I found out recently. But after he was the director of the Slade, he became the director of the National Gallery, and at the same time, was overlapping, he was the president of the Royal Academy. So I was thinking, very interesting. I don't think anyone could do that today because the job load would be too much. But it just shows how times change. He was a great friend of Leighton's, and they met in Italy as young men. And this is a drawing by him that's in the collection. Here is Alphonse Le Gros, who is a favourite person of mine because he was a Frenchman who was friends with Poynter and came to London, was sort of persuaded to come and teach etching here at the Slade and became the director. But he was also friends with Whistler. That's really was his introduction to London. And as you can see, he was sculpted by Rodin. I put this in because it relates to the next. No, it relates to him because he was well known for drawing in silver point, using a metal stylus to make his drawing. This here on the right-hand screen is done like that. So he'd be working on a prepared piece of paper and sort of incising into it his drawing. And this is an early, obviously, early sketchbook, but in Victorian times, people would have sketchbooks like this, and they would have their stylus there, and they could flip them open and do their drawings, just as artists are doing today, of course. And I was recently in Portugal and came across this fantastic tile, which shows the same sort of design of book, but it's actually, it's a proverb tile. And the translation is new problems, so they're mathematical problems. So I was just thinking about the idea of mathematical drawings, that excitement. On to Fred Brown, who was known to be quite a sort of scary, rather tall and gaunt figure. And this is a drawing that I saw at an exhibition in Bath recently at the Holborn, which was, I'd missed it. I'd missed this drawing when I saw the exhibition at Pallant House. And then I was obviously thinking about this talk, and I found this drawing, and I just thought, this is perfect, isn't it? This is how you imagine a rather sort of patriarchal teacher actually pointing to what Gwen John is doing here with her painting. And it's her brother who has done this drawing and caught the two in deep concentration, parallel concentration. I just thought it was just a delightful piece. And I've also put this on here because this is her signing in, G.M. John, Gwendolyn Mary John. So there's a sort of fantastic sort of throwback and link with history, I think, with these objects, yeah. So that's Fred Brown, who was involved in and set up the New English Art Club, and he was responsible for drawing up the rules of the club. And he had a very broad teaching experience. And his assistant was Tonks, who became the next director. But before we talk about him, I just want to show you another rather beautiful drawing, which is in Swindon Art Museum. If you ever go to Swindon, I have been to Swindon and seen this drawing, lovely piece, by Gwen John. And I've just paired it with this very wonderful text, I think, because I think quite often people are sort of intrigued about how artists go about their work. So she says, I'm doing some drawings in my glass, as in using my mirror, and this is the period when there is a drawing, actually, of her using her naked body as a model. So I put white in the colour, so it's like painting in oil and quicker. I have begun 5. I first draw in the thing, then I trace it onto a clean piece of paper by holding it against the window, then decide exactly on the tones, then try and make them in colour and put them on flat, and then the thing is finished. She says, the first one she finished, it was rather bad because of the difficulty of getting the exact tones of colour and the hesitations and not knowing enough about watercolour. I want my drawings, if they are drawings, to be definite and clean like Japanese drawings, but I've not succeeded yet. I think even if I don't do a good one, the work of deciding on the exact tones in colour and seeing so many pictures, as one sees each drawing as a picture, and the practice of putting things down with decision ought to help me when I do painting in oils. In fact, I think all is there, except the modelling of flesh, perhaps. And it's interesting that she's also wanting to be up to the minute with the Japanese stuff, I think. And this image is in the UCL art collection, and it's a piece of paper that she's drawn on twice, and you can see the work that's on the right-hand side is in the British Museum. It's a Raphael drawing, and this is a complete sort of proof, if you like, that she, like many of our students today, go up to the British Museum and do some drawing, and go into the print room there and have fun looking. So you can see in the red crayon, and this It's great, isn't it? Very exciting, I think. And here, perhaps more mundane than what one would expect, but I thought I'd put this trio of figures, 1895, 1905, 1914 life drawing by women, Nettleship, Adams, and Carrington, Dora Carrington. Now we're moving on. Henry Tonks, who gave up being a doctor to become an artist, but during the war famously went and worked with the plastic surgeons and helped them with his drawings of seriously mutilated soldiers. It's a sort of famous set of work, some of which is in our collection. And then over on the right-hand side, we've got his amazingly precise drawings. I've got a nice quote from Henry Tonks. He said, he was a traditionalist. "I don't believe I really like any modern development," he said. So that was Tonks. And now I've come to this point in the talk where I've got this very exciting, I think, quote, which is a piece of writing by the Slade archivist, who was also a teacher, an art teacher and an artist, Stephen Chaplin. He wrote, "There is a widely expressed affirmation of a Slade tradition, but can we propose that any account of the school can be called standard? I find that still artists speak of a Slade tradition, but on being stopped by my questioning, find it hard to define further. I have had the purpose, first, of proposing that there is no thread of continuity running through the school, but of secondly, stressing that if agents perceive that there is one, ergo there is." So this complete paradox, which I think just carries on now. People think that the Slade is one thing, but in fact the Slade is all sorts of other things. And pivoting into the war, the Second World War, we've got Milein. But anyway, you can see where she is. Here she is. She did what some of our students did today. We had our photograph. We had the school photograph today. Some certain students always sit right in the middle on purpose. And it's a good idea, so we know where she is. And this is Randolph Schwab, who was the director at the time. And on the right-hand side, you can see the sort of very precise, rather, I think, not my sort of drawing, but that was what he was doing. He was very good at this. He apparently was just a really gentle, lovely soul, and she liked him a lot. But we're moving now to perhaps the most exciting transitional time for the Slade. This was when William Coldstream took over, and these are the sort of drawings that Coldstream did. You can see even more focus than some of the other things we've seen, and here we're getting real measurements. Coldstream, as I mentioned before, had set up the Euston Road School with Passmore and Claude Rogers, and he then had gone and was working in Camberwell, and he was a big star, if you can be an art star, really, and all the students were very keen to make work in his manner. When he came to the Slade, he decided that that actually was a very bad idea. He said he was interested in the process of making art and learning to make it. A shared emphasis on observation took precedence over any individual genre taught at the Slade. As a consequence of his open-mindedness, his influence as a teacher was immense. He said about his own genre, "What is wrong with bad representational painting is that it is stuck in a certain convention." So there was a man who was very, very keen on a certain sort of drawing, and he didn't want everybody to have to follow that. He wanted everybody to be able to express themselves. So this is in the 60s. He set up a film department. He invited Harold Cohen to come and talk about and teach abstract art. So it was a real mixture. And now, in our audience, we've got the painter Maggie Hambling, who did this later on. I'm not suggesting this was contemporary with this, but this is a wonderful drawing of one of her early teachers, her teacher in her early career, Cedric Morris, who was also running an art school in Suffolk. Here, this is Coldstream's signature from when he was a student at the Slade, because what I haven't said is that there are a number of people who were teaching at the Slade who had also studied here. And this beautiful drawing, which is in the UCL art collection of a model, this is Dennis Crefeld work. Also at the Slade during Coldstream tenure, which was 26 years. So in a way, he was able to be freer because the place was sort of stable under his regime. So we've got a soft ground etching from Denis Marzi, and on the right-hand side, a work from 65, coloured pencil on paper by the late, great Philip de Barlow, who was also not only a student here, but also taught here for many years. Then we have in the audience, actually, as well, Tim Hyman, who did this rather lovely panoramic view of London. And this is a drawing. He's often using a small sketchbook and making drawings of what he sees. And I think, am I right? Is this you, Tim, here as well? Observing? I don't know. That is a stand-in. Well, that's, yes, stand-in, yeah. And it's the South Bank, we know. We can see the shards. So you can also date it by these buildings. That's another way of wonderful thing about drawing. So, Paul Arago was also a student here at that time, and I had trouble finding a drawing by Paul Arago, but luckily, as I said, I was in Spain, and what did I see? I saw this, which is a fantastic, not by Paula, this is a tile drawing, but it made me think of her and the sort of type of figures that she was often drawing. Then I came across this tile, which is by her in about 2000, and this leopard lady is in the signing in books. This is sort of one of those cartoons that I just thought, there's this fantastic sort of synchronicity that's going through all of this, connecting. Here we have two people who were also here at that time. Firstly, on the left-hand side, we've got a drawing which has recently won the Derwent Art Prize, drawing by June Collier, who was here 61-64, and she's just won the first prize of that drawing competition, which is terrific. And also, I thought, how marvellous that this has just happened, and I'm going to be talking about drawing. And this is somebody who was here in the 60s and who's making art now and getting recognition for the work that she's doing at the moment. And Sharon Morris, also a Slade, if I could say it, Slade student, still teaching with us, Professor Morris, and this is one of the views from Wales that is in the book. Two more that are in the book. This is by Jane Parker, and this by Neil Jeffreys, portrait of his father. And I'm afraid this is rather weird to have going like this, but I had trouble finding a drawing, I confess. And then I had this book at home, and I thought, well, I'll just use this. It's got his painting behind, and it also says that, you know, he was writing books as well. Ron Bowen taught here for many years, particularly in undergraduate painting. He was invited to come by Gowing. He was teaching in Chelsea, an American artist, and he wrote a book that was also about how can we draw, how should we draw. And this is a drawing of his. I've paired it with Jock McFadden, who is an artist who was also teaching here for 1 day a week for a number of years, 25 years, which is a sort of mixture, observation, cartoony, real, fantasy. It's quite nice. We're having a little look into the bedroom shenanigans. And Patrick George. I stole these off the web because I wanted very much to show his drawings. And they were, in fact, unsold lots at an auction house recently. Here's Bernard Cohen, director from 88 to 2000, when I arrived. Not exactly 88. And Polly Townsend, who was also here then, and she's just won second prize in this same Derwent drawing competition, which I thought was a sort of weird coincidence. And Ed Allington, who was a great asset to our staff and is no longer with us, who's somebody I knew before I came to work here, who made these fabulous drawings on recycled paper, a very great sculptor, but actually brilliant at making these super drawings, which I think are sort of very, very unique and exciting, and I'm grateful to be able to show these, which are in a private collection. So he says in his book, there are artists who write as well as make art, and there are those who do not. I believe in writing as I believe in teaching, as part of the broader spectrum of sculptural practice. And I've put James Keith's drawing, which is in my drawing book, beside it, and I thought there was this sort of wonderful complicity and dialogue here between the two. This is another work from Ed, and he was very keen on John Flaxman, and I've put the Flaxman here because there's I won't read it to you now, but there is a sort of wonderful, a whole section on Flaxman's writings, which is all about drapery and the sinuous lines of drapery and what you can do. And obviously he was a sculptor too, and he was making those sort of shapes with his stone. I love those two together. And the sort of madness of this drawing is sort of so exciting. John Aitken, director from 2000 to 2000. And on the right-hand screen, we've got Susan Collins, who was our first female director. I don't know whether I should say. Well, anyway. And this is it's a really interesting piece. This has got a reflection of the Slade building there on some sort of satellite above the world. It's a digital drawing, I should say. Kieran Reid, graph paper and solid shapes, or pretending to be solid. And Mary Evans, who you just met at the beginning of the talk. This is a recent work that she made in South Africa last year for an exhibition. Silhouette cutouts and the idea of guilt and guilt, things gilded and being guilty. Now I'm going to whiz through a few of the drawings that are in the book without saying who they're by, just to show you the breadth. Because when I asked people to come and do a piece, some people didn't want to be involved at all. Fine. Other people, I said, well, you can do what you want. Initially, I had an idea of how I would ask people to respond to the same thing, so we'd have all drawings responding to the same thing. But then there were complaints, so I said, okay, do what you like. I'm not Tonks or Coldstream. So this is a selection. I can tell you that that's Sandra's, though, who did the first. She did the first drawing that you saw on film, that one there. So you can see we've got drawings, we've got collage, we've got digital work, we've got old-fashioned charcoal, a bit of watercolour on a bit of exercise paper, and this has got bits rubbed out, which I quite like, this idea of the eraser making the drawing appear. Space things and drawing lines and drawing nothingness and family and photos and scenes and people, and the world will end in the year 2060, which is something that Isaac Newton said. And then I'm going to just finish off quickly with a couple of drawings that come. These are present-day students, because I thought, I'm just talking about the past and everything, let's bring it up to the future. So these were pretty random, I must say, that I chose, because random? No, things are never that random. But what I found very interesting here is that they are drawing in what you might call an old-fashioned way, and making things appear in a very contemporary fashion. So this by Beth McAllister, and the other piece by Leo, which I must say is a detail, but I just thought it was so funny. So obviously I don't understand the intricacies of the world like he does. There's a great sort of frustration there. But it's a much bigger piece, as you see. And I thought I'd show you some of our students. This was in a seminar. That's when the drawing was being discussed. And I just wanted to show you this, because although Jane Gifford, who made this drawing, which is seen on Instagram, she never came to the Slade, was not a student. She's dreaming of Slade students coming to see an exhibition. So I thought that was rather nice, and it fits so well within the title of drawing, because Jane Gifford, for the last 35 years, I think, has been drawing her dreams, so waking up in the morning and noting down her dreams, and later on in the day, drawing them up a little bit further, and some of them are taken further on from that. So a really exciting ongoing project, and if you are interested, do look on Instagram. And this last tiny section, I'm just going to talk a little bit about drawing books, how to draw. And I thought this was hilarious. This Ruskin book I have, and I was thinking, maybe I'll just show that book. And then I opened it up, and it said, it's the drawing prize. So imagine doing a drawing prize. And then actually it was this book was 4 years old when it was given to this person, George Wilde, Adamson George Wilde, as the drawing prize. So it was sort of a really, the newest thing on the block by Ruskin. And of course, he was a Slade Professor of Fine Art, Ruskin. Then this one here is the drawing prize that I was given in 1962 or something. But what I thought was interesting is I've got this as well, which is very interesting here. Talk about drawing as records and drawings as social commentary, unconscious. We've got a person with, they're married, they've got a wedding ring on, they're smoking, they've got a watch, which people, I know I've got one on, but I'm very old-fashioned. People don't use them anymore. And here we've got someone with a signet ring on too. So in this little, I bet none of that was being thought of at the time. And then here, we've got How to Draw Horses by John Skeeping. Very well-respected sculptor, first husband of Hepworth. And then this one is just a darling. This is the Teacher's Handbook, which, Huddersfield, the educational publishers, publishing this. 1 and 6, old-fashioned money. It's a really lovely little book. It's got colour thing. I have a penchant for these books. These are in my collection. This one by Ron Bowen, and this one was by Geoffrey Camp, who we talked about earlier. And this is the last slide, and I couldn't not talk about Van Dyck, whose image, self-portrait here this is an etching that's in the collection downstairs. I just love this blank space with the intensity. This is one of the drawings that was in the book we've got, which is just great, I think. And this one is hilarious. Someone using a toothbrush to clean up somebody near the fountain. And this gorgeous little piece with donkeys, which at first glance I thought were cows, but actually they're donkeys with a little dog here. And University College London, bang, let's just put our stamp right on there, I thought, just so you don't steal it. And my favourite quote, really, one of my favourite quotes, I just love this, Agnes Martin. Self-expression is inevitable in your work, in the way that you do your work, and in the results of your work. Yourself is expressed. There is the work in our minds, the work in our hands, and the work as the result. So, thank you very much for coming. There you go.